What I came to talk about today was my abortion story.
Okay.
I was 19 years old, so I was pretty young. The reason why I wanted to talk about it is because
You want to talk about it because you're doing it right now.
well,
Yeah.
the reason why I'm here is like, I mean, anyone can, again, like just tell a story, but I don't, at least for me, I haven't seen a lot of people either in my close circle or like public figures ever like come and share about their like abortion experience.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think most people don't talk about their I don't think you're the only person to ever have
Right.
one. So
No,
why do you think most people
definitely
don't
not.
share?
I think a lot of people don't share. I mean, relating back to me, it's like there's such a stigma. And I think like a lot of people have a lot of guilt associated to it. And they fear the judgment of what others might think of them when they talk about their abortion.
So what makes you able to talk about that right now if you feel like those things are all things that people experience? I'm assuming you experience that, right?
So like early on, yes, it would be very difficult for me to talk about it because I had so much judgment against myself, a lot of guilt. And then I feared like what other people thought. But I feel like now, 11 years later, like I've done a lot of healing and growing, and I feel it's important to share again because not saying that everyone's experience is going to be the same,
Right.
but someone might just need to hear it. Like someone young or even like older, anyone that might be in the situation might need to hear it and just
Possibly relate to this.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you're willing to share it. So can you take us from the beginning? Can you talk to us about Autumn when she was what, 21, 20?
19.
19.
I was 19. Again, like 6 months out of high school, kind of just starting young adult life, starting college.
What was your thought at that time? You're like, I'm going to college.
Yeah. So goals at that time for me were like, go to college. I didn't really know what I wanted to do yet college wise. I was working part-time at a grocery store, so I wasn't like making a lot of money. Just started driving, like just literally starting like life.
So more like the adult world started opening up for you at the time. Driving, going out, having, that makes total sense.
Yeah. And so, also at the time, like I was born and raised Catholic. So I practiced pretty much throughout my childhood growing up, did all the classes.
How Catholic were you?
I would say I was pretty Catholic. Like,
and what do I mean by that? Or that question, just for everybody to understand, is how much of a practicing Catholic were you?
I went to church pretty much every weekend with family. And then, like I said, I did all the classes growing up. I got baptized. First
so
communion,
you grew up in it, basically.
Yes, I was confirmed, all of that. I believe that I should have married. You're supposed to marry in the Catholic Church and all of that and have children. And
so a lot of the existing Catholic, I'll say it as dogma, you definitely carried.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
for
hard.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so keep going with your story.
So I always thought, like when I was older, like my goal or what I should be doing was like to have kids. But I didn't expect.
Where did you wait? First of all, where did that come from?
I just, again, that's like a societal norm. Like you go to school, you graduate, you're supposed to find someone, get married, have kids, be a happy family, die.
So was this your thought, or this is just kind of what you grew up in? I mean, you were Catholic, so this is what more was taught to you, or this is what you wanted?
Over time, I think today I feel like that was taught to me. And so like also,
but at the time you thought that was you. That was okay.
Yeah. At the time I thought that was me. But I never expected to like get pregnant so young, which is very an immature thought, especially if you're sexually active, something can happen.
Right.
And so, I missed my period. I was freaking out. I wasn't on birth control at the time, didn't use any protection. And so I took the birth control test at my friend's house because that felt like the safe space for me to do it at
the time.
Yeah, at the time. And so like I just remember like all of the nerves that I had inside me, just like praying to God in those moments that I was gonna not be pregnant. And turns out the
Do you have
test
those nerves now, just talking about it?
about not being pregnant.
Just nerves, as you're telling us this.
No.
Okay.
No. It's just I'm trying to like repicture because again it was so long ago, so it's like repicturing
Yeah, sure.
all the steps that happened. Um and so yeah, the test was positive. I remember my friend and her mom were like, "Oh my God, what are you gonna do? Like, we're here to support you through whatever you choose to do. Like, are you gonna talk to your mom? Like all these things." And so at the time also I was so scared to like tell my mom that I was pregnant, so I didn't.
Mm.
I didn't open up to her at all during the whole process that I was pregnant at all, because I feared, again, like my family being Catholic, I wasn't sure if maybe they would like cast me out if she heard about me like wanting to even consider an abortion, or like.
So you were the one that decided to say nothing the whole time.
I was the one that decided to say nothing.
And it
the
was
whole
out of
time.
what? Fear?
Yeah, 100% out of fear.
Or judgment, I'm assuming. It's either
It
one.
was both fear
Got
and
it.
judgment combined.
Okay.
And so at the time, again, I couldn't picture me having a kid that young for multiple reasons. Again, first reason being so young, like I'm starting my life. I'm just opening the door to all these possibilities of where I'm going to go, thinking about school, work, and also, if I were to continue with the pregnancy, the father said that he was not going to be involved. He had no interest in having a child at all. This actually happened to be a second abortion, so he was like,
For you?
no. He had an abortion with an ex prior. And then I was the second person that he got pregnant and was like, yo, I'm not going to have a kid at all. He was very against it. He was like,
Do you think that influenced you as well?
yeah, it definitely did. Back then I saw him as like this terrible person for all the things he said.
Well,
like,
before we go back to how you remember, let's stick to you are 19.
Yes.
We want to make sure that we understand where you are, because I need to understand where you were mentally at that time, right? So speak to me about 19-year-old Autumn through this. So he just tells you, hey, look, thank you for the fun, but fun stopped for me. Definitely don't want that.
Yeah. So there's that. Also, I had talked to his mom, and his mom was very Christian. She was super religious too. And she was like, you should have the baby. I'll be here to support you. And she basically told me, she was like, if you choose to have an abortion, you're going to be mentally and emotionally messed up the rest of your life. You'll probably abuse drugs and alcohol. You'll have to go to therapy forever. So I was presented
with like a dystopian
view.
With
a very dystopian view from her. And also it like both of them clashed. I mean, they were on opposite sides of the spectrum. So I was like, well,
what do you mean both of them?
Well, he didn't want the kid and she did. And so then I had to place myself in a scenario of like, well, if I have a baby, sure, I'll have support from her, but he's completely MIA. And it just seemed so disjointed to me to like raise a child that way. And so there was that. And then I had confided in our youth group leader at my church, because again, I was like going back to the church to try and get some guidance, because again, I was so completely torn. I didn't know what to do.
Well, so wait, you didn't tell your mom, but you did go seek guidance from church?
Okay. So told multiple people other than my mom. And so I went to the church, talked to him, and he wasn't like, you shouldn't get an abortion, but he was very pro, you should have the baby. And the reason why was because, well, I could hold the baby to term and then like give the baby up to adopt for him, because he was a single guy. He wasn't married, but he always like wanted kids.
Wait. So hold on. That got by me. Sorry. He said, you can go ahead and have the baby and then I'll just adopt it.
Yeah.
But it's his baby.
Right.
So I'm not understanding that.
No, like if I were to go through with the pregnancy, he was like, well, I'll adopt.
His baby? Do you see why it doesn't make any sense? He's the father.
No, I said the youth group leader at my church.
I'm sorry. That's okay. I thought it was the guy's dad. Okay.
No,
sorry.
this is when I went to the church. I was just feeling more and more desperate. So I was like, I got to talk to someone.
So wait, the father's mom tells you, have it, I'll take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
You go seek guidance from church.
Mm-hmm.
The church leader then says, I will go ahead and just have it and then I'll adopt it.
Right.
So everybody that you have to turn to, that at least you felt safe to, is telling you, have the baby.
Right.
Got it. Continue.
And so when he told me that, like adoption also wasn't something that I was necessarily comfortable with, because I just had all these conflicting feelings. I was like, well, why would I hold this baby to term just to give the baby up to someone else? Like, sure, maybe one day like I can visit the baby, but it just seemed like such a weird disconnect to me at the time. Like I couldn't understand it. And then also like, sure, I could raise a baby to term and put him up for adoption and put him in the foster care system, which is already kind of a mess for those kids. And so when I left the church that day, I left even more confused at the time. I can
imagine.
Yeah, I was super lost. Like, didn't have any good like advice or perspectives shared with me. Everything was like, don't have the baby, or do have the baby because we'll take care of it. I mean, I think at the time I was like, well, what about me? Like, that's what I was looking for. Like, someone support me. Like, what should I do for me? And so
what does me stand like for you when you say, what about me? Was it more about your life with a baby?
Yeah.
Or what your future was like?
It was about like the future. Like, no one I was talking to was considering like the future of like me. And so
how'd that make you feel, by the way? Being young and in basically being not seen by anyone.
I felt like I couldn't even consider me. Like,
did you feel like it was bad to consider your thoughts?
Yeah, I did. I felt like, I felt like I was a terrible person to like consider thinking about me and like having the abortion, because everything was like so geared towards like, well, you need to have the baby because like the baby's life and you should have life no matter what the situation. So there's me trying to find a clear path to go down, which wasn't very clear. And, ultimately also like, if I really did want to have a baby, you would think like that was the time to do it. But I just wasn't being called to have a baby. Like, I felt like there was so much...
Hold on. Why did you think that was the time to do it? Like, if you're going to have a baby, do it then. Why?
Well, I thought, what if in the future, if I do want a baby, what if I can never have one again? Like, what if this is my only chance to have a baby?
That's very Catholic thought for you to think of.
Yeah, it is. It was. So I literally thought that way because I didn't know the future.
Right.
I thought I was supposed to have kids. Like, this might be my only shot. Like, and then what happens if I don't have it? Then I'll never have a kid. Like, all this.
Yeah, for sure.
Thoughts, yeah.
Yeah. So go back to being Autumn of you now you went to your inner circle that you felt comfortable with. You have gotten all this feedback. Now what do you do?
Now I had to make a decision, and I had to make a decision very quickly, because to use the abortion pill, now according to Planned Parenthood today, you have to be no more than 11 weeks.
And far along were you at the time?
Probably probably 6.
Okay, so you still
6
had
weeks.
a little bit of time, but not
I
a lot.
had a little bit of time. I'm not sure if it was less time then. Again, like things could have changed since then, but I'm just going off of like what the website says today, 11 weeks. And I didn't like want to go through surgery. And again, if I had to go through surgery, then that means I would have had to tell my mom, which I was so deathly scared to do. I just wanted to like be done with all of it.
And go through surgeries in case it was a wanted abortion later.
Yeah.
Then okay, got it.
Yeah. And also because it was the father's second time going through this process, he was also like, hey, you don't want to abort later on. Like the time is now. So I had to figure it out really, really quickly.
I mean, sometimes I take 2-3 weeks to think about something, and I feel like, and it's nothing as big as I'm trying to put myself in your shoes, as I would think that type of. I mean, even if for you at the time, you felt it was a very big decision.
It was, it was such a huge decision to like act very quickly on. But what it came down to was like, obviously I decided to go through with the abortion, and that was it was a very lonely road during that whole process, because so how it works out is you go to Planned Parenthood. They give you 2 pills. The first one you take orally. It basically like stops all life from going to the baby. So it just like kills the pregnancy there. Then a few hours later, you have to take a second pill, but you insert it vaginally, and that starts the process of like aborting the fetus.
Got it.
And
so this is you now saying you have made the decision to abort.
Yeah, I made the decision to abort.
So before we go there, at the time, why'd you make that decision? Like, what was the thing that you thought? You said, I need to do this because of this.
I need to do this because I didn't want to have a kid at that age, 100%.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I just did not see it as like something possible or something that I truly wanted to do.
So just
given circumstances.
Right. So just to recap, you're a 19-year-old girl, little woman, have exhausted your internal circle that you felt comfortable with, having to do this all on your own with the weight of the world on you. And then you have to make the decision for yourself, which is basically what everybody else told you not to do. Mm-hmm. Think about that, right? Because that's
except the father.
Correct. Go dad for the support. And so I just want people to understand, like, that's crazy. That's a crazy amount of pressure all at once, being a young person.
Yeah.
Still not figuring it out. Mm-hmm. So you do. Now this is the process. You just explained.
Yeah.
So you do that.
I do that. I basically have to be out of commission for a few days. So here comes the continued lies that I have to tell my mom to cover this whole thing up. I had to call out of work proactively a couple days. I basically had to call out of school a couple days. I was like, well, where am I going to do this at? I can't do it anywhere else but my house. Because if I stayed at someone's house for a couple days, my mom would be like, well, why?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah.
And so came home from Planned Parenthood with the prescription and also a prescription of oxycodone for pain.
Oof.
Yeah. We'll get into that later. Yeah. So literally go to his friend's house because I dropped him off. He wasn't driving at the time.
Wait, so you're still hanging around this guy?
Yeah. So he was the only like physical support I had next to me, like guiding me like through the process. Like he helped pay for it. He paid for most of it because I didn't really have any money. And he was there with me, like going to my appointments at Planned Parenthood. And then he was there like the day that I picked up the prescription and everything. And So drop him off at his friend's house, and then I go home to start the whole thing. So I take the first pill orally, and then I think it was like before bed, like again a few hours later, I had to insert the pill vaginally, and then they also suggested you take an oxycodone at the time because like you're going to experience pain. So proactively, I was like, sure, I'll just do that. And so I'm in my room, like I remember I had like a pad on too. They told you to wear a pad because you're going to bleed. They didn't tell me how much. And so like I'm in my room, and I fell asleep very quickly because of the pain pill. And um then I woke up in the middle of the night, and with the most excruciating cramps, pain I've ever felt in my entire life. I feel like I have a pretty high pain tolerance now after that.
So you say cramps because that's how you knew what it felt like a normal, you were on a period.
Yeah, but it was like
Just intense.
it was so intense, and it was like boom, that was the moment like my body was now trying to expel like the fetus. And I woke up in so much pain, even with the having taken the pain pill. And it was like I instantly started bawling my eyes out. Like I literally
So you're in the middle of the night, you
Yeah.
just wake up and you start crying.
Yeah. And
Why?
it was
Hold on,
almost like
pause. Why?
it wasn't like it was like because that was the process of like that was it. Like the baby was like moving out of my body.
So was it more your understanding of like this is happening and you made a decision, and the decision is coming to fruition
Yeah.
as we speak?
Right. Yeah.
Like that's what's going through your mind?
So it was an emotional thing, but also at the same time I felt like it was like also my body's like natural reaction to like losing a baby. And I know, and I think that because from what I've heard from people that do have miscarriages, like that does happen. Aside from like being sad, it's like their body's like natural reaction to, because we're as humans we're supposed to like procreate, you know. And so yeah, so that happened. Pain, bawling my eyes out in my room, all while my mom's like just down the hallway in her room sleeping.
So on top of this, you're still trying to make sure that she can't understand any of this.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so fall back asleep within seconds because of the pain pill. Then the next day I wake up and I go to the bathroom and like plop. The whole sack just like went into the toilet. And then I stayed home the whole day. And
so hold on, because remember, I'm a man.
Yeah.
It's different for me. So I'm trying to understand, what does that moment feel like that you're sitting there and you know, like you see it, it's real?
Yeah. It was I just wanted to be numb. Let's just put it that way. Like through again, because I also being Catholic had all this guilt about aborting. So I had like all these different emotions, and then just like going through the whole physical process of like losing, like there it goes, it's down in the toilet. And it was it was just very raw. Like I felt so raw in that moment. And then like I just wanted to feel numb. Like, yeah.
Is the smiling that you do like a coping mechanism when you're telling this story? When you kind of laugh? I don't know if you noticed that.
I mean, yeah, I would say like sometimes if I get anxious about something or nervous, like yeah, I might smile.
Good.
It probably is a coping mechanism for sure.
Yeah. And again, just it's tough what we're talking about. You know, this is real.
Yeah.
So, and I appreciate you sharing. So you see this thing that was once inside of you, now it's out.
Mm-hmm.
Here's kind of the collapse of everything. It's all here in this one synchronous moment. You feel the guilt, and I can't imagine there's guilt of I did something wrong, and then there's guilt, and then you're alone.
Yeah.
Having to acknowledge that moment.
100% alone, for sure. I mean, I did have one friend that I confided in at the time. This is another friend. She was the only person that did say, hey, whatever you decide to do, like, I'll support you through it. Like, I'm so sorry that you have to go through this. And so we're still really close
School
today.
friend?
Yeah.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And we're still really close today. The friend that I was with at the time, whose house I went to, our friendship ended pretty quickly after her and her family found out that I was going to have an abortion. Because
she was religious?
Not really, but it was like there was their judgment. So like they would have supported me if I had the baby. But when they found out that I was having abortion, like that was it. That I was basically like the worst person in their eyes.
So they didn't agree with it either.
Correct.
So you have, based on your story, you have every adult looking down upon you based on the decisions that you were making, even though the person it's going to affect is you. Mm-hmm. None of these other people that said, well, we'll help you.
Yeah.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So for everybody still listening, keep this in mind.
Yeah. So 100% alone. Again, I chose not to tell my mom. I'm still lying through everything. Like I knew she knew something was up because I had lost a lot of weight. And like I said, I was working at a grocery store. So I was like walking all shift.
Did you just tell your mom you were in your hot girl era?
No, I should have though. But no, she thought like my job was literally like killing me because of how much weight I was losing, because I was pregnant and I was like not obviously taking in enough nutrients. Like that wasn't my goal. And so she saw that something was wrong.
Did she ever actually come talk to you about it?
No.
So even she didn't get like involved. She was like, look, whatever's going on.
Yeah.
She wants to tell me, she'll kind of come tell me.
Right. Yeah. And so going through the whole process, I'm experiencing a lot of different emotions. I definitely like was experiencing depression like right off the bat. And when they say that pain pills are addictive, like those things are addictive. Like if you're in any type of,
is it pain, or you think it's more of a mental pain? Like
it was a mental pain for sure.
So it wasn't physical pain that you were in?
No, I was no longer in physical pain. There was no reason why I should have been taking those pills still. It was literally, like I said, because I wanted to feel numb. The feeling that I got from taking it, like, again, it was a numbness and it just put me to sleep. And all I wanted to do was sleep. I didn't want to be awake at all to like even think about anything or deal with the emotions or the reality. I was just like, I just want to sleep.
So how many pills did you have?
I never finished the whole bottle, and I didn't take them every day, but there were some nights where I was just like, fuck it. Let me just take it and go to sleep. And then, what stopped me from taking those, and when I realized, I was like, holy shit, I got to get my shit together. My mom had actually found them. And so here comes another lie. She was like, hey, what are these? Like, why are you hiding them? She found them in my closet. And I came up with another lie to explain why. Because again, I just couldn't come clean about what I did. And so I told her, I was like, oh, well, she was like, hey, like, do you still have emotions about your dad passing? Because he had passed away when I was like a senior in high school. So I was
what, like in year terms, like a year before that?
Yeah, maybe like a year or two before that. And I was like, yeah, that's why. And she was like, like, you can always talk to me about stuff, blah, 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 but like, you shouldn't you shouldn't be taking pills and stuff. So that moment like kind of snapped me out of whatever like thing I was putting myself into.
Mm-hmm.
And I got rid of them.
So you possibly could have gone deeper into that depression.
I could have gone deeper into that depression,
Wow.
but it was like,
go mom.
yeah, it was that moment where I was just like, when she found it, I was like, dude, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And so years pass, and before I get to the years, so me still trying to kind of be okay with the decision that I had made. Again, me being very like invested with the church. I was like, well, how am I ever going to step foot into a church again? Because I felt like, well,
wait. So I think what you need to do is set that up a little better. You have the abortion.
Mm-hmm.
You're having an existential crisis now with your religion.
Mm-hmm.
And now you are trying to just keep up the huge, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you are still going to church.
Yeah.
On Sundays, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Just once a week.
I started attending less and less. But excuse me.
Somebody wants to sponsor that water break, let me know.
Water break. Yeah, so I had, again, yeah, you're right, existential crisis with like my religion and trying to return back to normal, at least what I thought was normal.
But the genie's out the bottle for you.
Yes.
You have to, like, for all of us listening to this right now, genie's out the bottle for you.
Yeah.
You've now had to take on this very traumatic, difficult situation, and now you're plugging back into your old way of thinking. And now I'm assuming you're wrestling with it.
Oh yeah. So like I said, I was like, how am I ever going to be worthy enough to step foot into a church again? Because I had this abortion, and like I was trying to find like external validation to help me feel better about everything that I did.
From who or where?
I went to confession.
Got it.
So went to the confession. I was so nervous. I was standing in line. I just remember like I wanted to turn around so many times because I didn't even want to like confess to the priest because I was like worried, like, what is he going to think? Like, well, just all these things I was just worried about so much. And so I went in there and I told him, and he like paused for a little bit. And, you know, he blessed me. He said whatever prayer he did. He told me to go like pray afterwards. And he told me that for me to help me cope with this, he was like, you should give back to kids in your future, like maybe become a teacher or like just, he said, like, surround yourself with children to like help you cope with this. Yeah. And and so I did the prayers that he told me to do afterwards in the church. I left and I did not feel any better. I literally, I thought like, oh, and he absolved me of my sins. So like you would think that's better, right? Again, it's like some external thing I was looking for to make me feel better. And I did not feel any better. And so that what I needed was just like internal forgiveness, which took a long time to get to.
So can we explore that a little bit?
Yeah.
So what, I'm assuming years, you are still kind of struggling with processing, I'm assuming. And when I mean processing, I think it's more mentally, emotionally than it is physically, right? Like physically you're back on. Yeah, right.
Physically I was fine. Yeah.
Got it. So take me through what that looks like. How did it manifest itself in your life through the years that you went through? What is it that you've now noticed that guilt, that weight, that judgment, this is how it manifested itself in my life throughout the years? before you, I'm assuming you're going to tell us maybe there became a day or a time that you kind of made peace with it.
Yeah.
So what does it look like before then?
So before then, the more I felt comfortable talking about like my experience with new friends, new people I dated, like people that I found some sort sense of like safety in being vulnerable.
Talking about your abortion?
Yeah.
Okay.
So like the more that I talked about it and shared, like the more it did help me not feel like it was this thing I couldn't talk about. So like opening up, being more vulnerable about that to other people did help. And then as I started aging, obviously, like, it was really like realizing, being very mindful of like where I was compared to like where I could have been. So like mid-20s now, I'm going out more, I'm traveling, I'm now got first degree, now I'm in school to get my second degree and meeting new friends and having more life experiences. And so like being mindful of like that I was able to do that because it would have looked very different if I did have a baby. Who knows if I would have continued with school? Who knows if I would have like met the friends that I did or traveled to the places that I did at XYZ. So that really kind of helped in my healing process as well. But still, I never felt fully like healed. Like there was still something there that was holding me back from.
Yeah, but how did that manifest itself? Like I need to understand what did it look like throughout those years?
How did what manifest?
The not forgiving yourself. Like how did it manifest itself in your life?
I mean, it was like this weight that was always in the back of my mind, like whenever, especially when I interact with family and like something about abortion would come on the news, I would just kind of like, I would like instantly tense up because like hearing whoever talk about what, I felt like there was like this distance that I had in between me and my mom because I was never like honest with what I had went through. Like I just felt like there was like this certain distance, like she was just kept at a distance. And having all of this, and there was multiple times too that I had like thought today's the day I should probably tell my mom. But also like I talked myself out of it so many times because I was like, well, it's already been 3 or 4 years. Why would I tell her now? Because like, well, what if she's more hurt now because I didn't tell her about it then? Or like, I still had all of these what ifs and the fear of like the judgment. And so I was like, it's better off that I just don't tell her at all. Like, I don't want to hurt her. And so all of these anxieties and still that heavy weight, I could feel it. Like, even though the process of healing from it was getting better, it was still like there and just like hanging on for like years.
Yeah. But what did healing, because you're talking about healing and you're saying that you were healing, but what did the healing process look like?
It was finding forgiveness in myself, but that did take a long time.
And what did you feel like you had to forgive yourself for or find forgiveness for?
Well, it was finding forgiveness and acknowledging that like the choice that I did make was the best choice for me at the time. And it was just like not doubting the choice that I made.
So I think it's maybe more that, right? I mean, I'm guessing here. You have to tell me yes or no. Was it more that?
Yeah.
Okay. So what did that look like?
The process of forgiveness.
Yeah.
Yeah. It looked like
To you, right?
Yeah.
It could be different for everybody, but I'm saying like speak to your
it
truth.
it was really just like being kind to myself and not beating myself up like I was like earlier on about making this decision. It was just like learning to love myself and knowing I'm not this bad, terrible person that maybe I thought I was in the beginning or people painted a picture of me as. And it was, yeah, just really like learning to love myself for like who I was, where I was at that point in time, and not doubting what I had did or the decision that I made.
What are some of the things that led you to understand what that looked like?
It was really kind of like it was more like a self-discovery process. Like there was a lot of things that I had stopped doing after I had the abortion. Like I was very artistic. I had stopped drawing. I had taught myself how to play the guitar. I stopped doing that. And I had went so long without doing those things that I felt like I couldn't do them again. And one day I realized, I was like, what do you mean you can't do them again? Like it's not like it's a difficult thing to do. Like you pick up a pencil and you draw. It was all like a mental block that I had.
And just for reference, these are all your paintings, by
yes,
the
those
way.
are all my paintings. I don't think they can see. Um, and so the day I was like, why am I stopping myself from doing the things I once enjoyed, was the day that like more of that, I guess, forgiveness started to come in, because now I was allowing myself to like be me again and not feel like I couldn't do these things because it reminded me of the abortion. Like, so it was really like more of a self-discovery process, kind of learning again, like learning to love myself.
Okay. So help me understand, if you could talk to that girl today, give me your advice for that girl. And I really want you to think about this.
My advice for,
Like, just talk to her.
yeah, so
Like, just use me as that. Like, you're talking to me. I'm you when you were young. Give me some advice.
okay, you being me as pregnant, I would say like, hey, you've got a lot of different pressures around you, pulling you different ways. And even though it was like really hard, like know that at the end of the day, you always have to choose you, no matter what anyone thinks.
It's okay.
And also to tell younger me, like, just open up to your mom. Because in the end, fast forward 11 years later to this year, I finally decided to tell my mom. I woke up one morning and obviously now where I am today, I realize the weight that stress has on the body and what it can do. And I was like, I have to do this because there was still this thing that was hanging on. What was it? It was the fact that I had like this secret that I felt it was that I was keeping from my mom. And so I decided that day that I was going to tell her, and I didn't talk myself out of it. We were on a walk that evening. And I was like, hey,
Mom. Give me advice.
Well, I'm going to get back to that.
Okay.
I was like, hey, Mom, I need to talk to you about something difficult that I had to do like a long time ago. And she was like, yeah, like, what is it? And I told her, I was like, I just want to tell you that when I was 19, I got pregnant and I had an abortion. And she like paused and, you know, she asked me a couple of questions. She was like, you know, who, and very minimal questions. And I just told her too, I was like, I'm sorry that I was never honest with you or open or felt comfortable enough to tell you because I was just so scared of what you would think. And she basically like pulled me in, she gave me a hug and she was like, I would never think poorly of you, you know, like you're my daughter. And at that time, you did the right thing that you thought you needed to do. And so, knowing that, what I would tell my past self is just tell your mom. Because if I had felt comfortable enough opening up about this with my mom then, how much different the whole process would have looked. I wouldn't have been as alone. I would have had support. I probably wouldn't have suffered like the emotional and mental
Anguish.
Yeah. If I had just told her. And 11 years later, like that could have saved me 11 years in some way. But through those 11 years, like I did learn some resilience for sure. There was a lot that I learned. So I'm grateful for like the learning and a lot of the stuff I've overcome. But at the same time, like I would still tell my younger self, like, just talk. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Got me a little bit. So I guess as a man, you know, you don't think about those things. That, you know, certain women have to face. And, you know, hearing your story, I just hope that anybody that listens to this as a man, like, they understand, like, what are they asking of somebody?
Mm-hmm.
You know, when they get them pregnant, and, you know, what does that really mean? Like, do you even understand what you're asking of that person? And the journey. I mean, you shared your journey, but I'm sure there's women out there that have probably some crazy shit that's happened to them.
Yeah.
And for me, it's more of maybe there's so many things that we as men could have done to like help. I don't know. You know, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe there was, maybe there's not. But if it's that easy for us to be able to get people pregnant, I think this story, I hope some people resonate with maybe just being a little bit more tender with people and not being so dismissive of just take the pill, right? That's all it is. Just take that pill and fix both of our problems.
Right.
Right. And
which it sounds so easy because it is that easy. But again, like I knew that I was probably going to struggle, especially after like what the father's mom had said. I didn't think I was going to struggle that bad, but I knew it was going to be difficult. But yeah, it's just as simple as take the pill. Go about your daily life. I think a lot of people think that they won't be affected in some way. But again, it depends on like where you are at that point in your life. I think like, again, me, if I was like going through it now at 31, I know a lot more about myself now today. I probably wouldn't have suffered so much mentally and emotionally because I know more of who I am today. But it's just different.
what do you think that has done for you today? It kind of like, what's the silver lining for some of this? And I don't want it to come off insensitive. I'm not trying to be, I guess what I'm really trying to see is, you know, that built some sort of character in you. And I think that even though we would all choose, right, not to have to go through some difficult times,
Mhm.
Can you share what some of those difficult times have done for you in your life today?
Yeah, I mean, it truly was like a very dark point in my life. Like probably the hardest thing that I had ever had to go through, even up until now. Well, that was probably one of the hardest things I had to go through, and being that young. Um, to feel that alone and like really be that alone during the whole process and going through the thick of it, the anger, the sadness, um, the the self hate, like all of that, and then to find a way to like pull myself out of that is huge. Like I I do give myself a lot of props for that because it could have stayed very gloom and bleak and depressing, but I knew that that wasn't a place for me to be, and I knew that there was more for me beyond that.
So what has actually come out from that? Like, can you share at least a little bit of either behaviors, mental strength, like what came from that, and what does it look like in your today life?
Um Today, well, I definitely, over the years still have been working on being very confident in the decisions that I make regardless of what people around me may think. Um that's something that I'm still working on, but that was like a huge, like very real moment of trying to practice that, to do what's right for me regardless of what others might be saying. Because imagine if I didn't even consider myself at that time, if I did go ahead and have the baby, you know again, my life would look very different right now, but who knows how I would be. Maybe I would have regretted having the child. Maybe I would have been a parent that just saw the kid as like, oh, you're a mistake. Like now I have to take care of you for so long. And, again, I don't know that just because of who I am as a person, but anything could happen. And, that the important thing is really like, you have to do what's best for you, no matter what society thinks.
What does self-love look like to you?
To me, self love is being aware of all your strengths and your weaknesses, but also like being kind to yourself through the process of really difficult things or really uncomfortable things, or like if you're somewhere where you think you could be better but you're not there, it's like being patient. Patience is huge. Patience is definitely huge in self-love because again, you can't you can't Catholic guilt yourself to be better.
So speaking of Catholic guilt, where do you stand now with your relationship with Catholicism or just religion?
So my relationship with Catholicism or religion in general has changed a lot since then. Even a few years after the abortion, I would still go to church every once in a while, but and at that point, like I had forgiven myself enough to feel comfortable going back to the church. But now I think a huge thing was realizing like I said, at the time, I went to the church because I thought I was going to feel forgiven. Like I thought after talking to the priest, I would feel completely absolved of everything and I would feel so much better about my life and everything after that. And the fact that that didn't happen was very eye-opening to me because I think people lean in towards the church as like that's the answer for everything. Like you're going to be okay because the church says you're okay. But like still inside, I was not okay. And so that was very like kind of eye-opening for me to realize like it's just an external thing. Like you have to be okay. You have to tell yourself that you're going to be okay. Religion's not going to tell you you're going to be okay. So yeah, I haven't gone to church in a while just because I'm just a very different person now. I also feel like a lot of people, when they go to church, they're going to feel really good for like an hour and then they go back to the normal daily routine of maybe not being the best person. Um, just, there's just so much.
But what, I guess, my curiosity is about where does religion stand in your life now comparatively where you used to be and what made that change?
So now I wouldn't say I practice any religion. Like I said, I haven't gone to church in years. I do believe that there is like some higher power, consciousness, something out there because what we live in is such a uniquely perfect and imperfect world. Like, why are we here? Like, there's still something out there that we don't know yet, but that's more how I lean towards thinking now rather than thinking that like what religion tells you, like there's the heaven, the hell. Again, we don't know anything, but that's such a maybe more so narrow-minded way of thinking than being open to like anything being possible. And so like the more I have questioned things over the years regarding like our existence and XYZ, like it just has like I've just naturally gravitated away from the beliefs of the religion.
Do you think being religious while you were younger, do you think that helped you or made it more difficult through the abortion experience?
I think it definitely made it more difficult.
Why?
For sure, because that was like a way of being that I knew how to. And now I was in this position that questioned that whole way of being.
Do you think that's the same for anything beyond religion? Maybe whatever, if somebody challenges your state of understanding of your existence, do you think that it's just too much to take for most people?
I think so. Um, I think it's hard. Again, like in thinking back to how I used to be, even as a kid, like I remember when I was in like second grade, and this girl that I was friends with, she was like, "The world's ending." I have no idea where she came up with that, but it like freaked me out, and I was actually like also very curious, like, well, what does that mean? Like the world is ending, and so I remember having talked to my mom about it, and she was like, she took me to the church to go talk to the priest because she obviously might not have like known how to go about that either. I was genuinely concerned as a little kid, like, what does that mean? And I just remember talking to the priest, and he was like, it's kind of hard to remember exactly everything he said, but it was basically like, don't fear, like, as you know, as long as your faith is strong, like, you'll be okay. I'm like, okay. And I feel like if you like believe that like your faith has got you, like you're gonna be good. And I think once you start to like question different things is when people start to get uncomfortable, because then that means that, well, their faith might not be there, or it might not be the thing that protects them the whole time. So it's easier to be set in this way of thinking like, oh, my faith has got me, like I'm good.
Until I'm assuming it doesn't.
Yeah.
Or you have to question something in your life that religion can't answer simply or at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So is that kind of how you come full circle on this? Is you had a religious belief, you felt very confident in your outlook or your view of the world, and then here comes a small little bump in the road called abortion, and then you lose your shit because there's too many things that are not unanswered. There's not a clear cut answer to the decision you have to make. It has to now make you think of possibilities that maybe you've never had to think about before, and it destabilized you as a human being to your core.
Yeah.
And then but time goes on, right? Like your decision still has to be made, period. Do you feel like that gave you a little bit more going through this? Do you feel like that gave you a little more, sympathy for people? Think about somebody going through that now, of understanding. It's like, yeah, it's a tough decision, but nobody knows the right answer but you.
100%.
So if you could talk to a 19-year-old right now that's going through that today, what advice would you give them? I'm assuming it has to be different than what you gave Autumn at 19, because you knew Autumn. You don't know them, but the woman that you are today, what advice would you give a 19-year-old if they're pregnant now and they're listening to this?
19-year-old that I don't know that's pregnant now. Like how far, and like just found out they're pregnant, or
Same situation as you is all you can kind of go with. It's just, remember, you're not telling them what to do.
right.
You're giving them advice of like what they should consider from your mind today.
From my mind today, I would still say consider yourself. Like, what do you feel is best for you? Still, it would be the same thing. What do you feel is best for you? Because again, like, that's a commitment. That's a huge commitment to go through caring for a child, especially up until, I don't know, 18 or whatever. And that's also 18 years of your life that you're not able to fully commit to yourself and like your learning and growth. And I feel like if I were to have a kid today, I would probably be a much different person. I don't think I would be the woman that I am today in the way that I think today, because I wouldn't have had that time to put into self-discovery, which I feel is very important. Like, I have nothing against people having kids, especially if that's something that truly calls to them. But I think people should be very mindful that it's okay to not have a child. Like, just because everyone doesn't mean that like that's your story. And if you have this desire to like learn and grow and figure yourself out, like that's the time, especially like going through your early 20s or 30. I mean, even up into your 60s, like we're still learning about ourselves. And I am very grateful that I had that time to like learn about myself a lot. And so, yes, I would tell that 19-year-old, like, what do you want to do for you? But also be aware, like, you have a journey of your own.
Yeah. I think that's like, if I were to think about that same situation, the only thing that comes to my mind is I just find it very difficult to think that a child could raise a child.
Right.
What do I mean by that? Is if I think to myself back when I was 21, God, even when I was 25, 26, 27, to who I am today at 41, you know, you don't feel it at the time. You believe, like, you know, I know some stuff. But
Yeah.
me in comparison or looking back, you know, I didn't know anything.
Yeah. And people, I mean, everyone will always say, like, you're never prepared for a kid. Of course not. Like, no one's ever prepared for that. But, like, literally, I was a child that was pregnant. Like, it just seems so chaotic. It just seems so, like, kids raising kids. And maybe that's the issue, because as a kid, you're not even, like, fully developed. You haven't had life experience to, like, better know yourself. And now you're, like, you're trying to raise a child with your current mentality of being a child. Like, what?
Yeah.
That's tough.
Conspiracy theory. I think that's what causes most of our problems today.
Yeah.
We're not being raised by parents that have had the time to figure themselves out. And by the time they figure themselves out, do they want to have kids? I don't know.
Right. I mean, like I said, some people might not have themselves figured out until they're like 60 or so. I mean, they could adopt at that point if they really did want to raise a child, but I don't know if everyone if everyone waited until they figured themselves out, maybe we wouldn't have kids in the world. Like, maybe we would just be like a dead species. We wouldn't last very long. I don't know.
Or maybe we'd be an amazing planet because we'd have people that loved us, had time to care for us.
Yeah.
We're these great adults with a lot of wisdom that they try to impart. And maybe they knew how to have the patience for us to be kids.
Yeah.
Crazy to think. Thank you. I mean that. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for going there with me. And I appreciate you being so vulnerable for somebody else to see what that looks like. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Bye.